That's your average. You're losing 95% of your audience in the first 30 days.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Aha Moments podcast with me, Kobi Omenaka. My guest this week is Brendan McNulty.
The MVP was not an MVP.
I came across Brendan as we are both mentors on the Growth Mentor platform, and I thought it would be a great way to connect with people who are also in a similar kind of industry.
I have been securely red-pilled, blue-pilled, I don't know what color pilled it is by AI.
We had a great discussion in this episode talking about what an MVP is in its simplest terms, a minimum viable product, through to going quite deep into AI and automation and talking about what the future might hold for people who are embracing it and people who aren't embracing it as well.
Actually, writing a book is not as difficult as having the motivation and the sit down and force yourself to do it instead of scrolling or watching Netflix.
I had a great chat with Brendan, and all the details to connect with him are in the show notes at the very end. Hey Brendan, thank you so much for joining me on the Aha Moments podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you, Kobi. What about you?
I'm doing great, yeah. We are recording at a time when the weather's starting to turn in the UK. You're in South Africa, you're in Cape Town, I believe.
Yeah, so the weather's turning the other way, but I'm still in my shorts.
Yeah, you're still in your shorts. Is that out of like steadfastness? Is that you're a shorts person for as long as possible, or is it just like that
no,
nice?
it's 25 odd degrees here today, and I went surfing this morning. I'm trying to turn the screws.
I was thinking, the weather's turning, but it's still 25 and it's still like surfing weather and stuff like that. So I spent like 2 weeks in Cape Town a few years ago and thought it was fantastic and did everything from the walking up, I think it's Plastic Crypt Gorge.
That's it.
To get up to the top mountain, which is awesome. And then did the wine routes and Victoria and Alfred areas into the V&A.
Yeah.
Is it Alfred or
yeah.
Alfred? Yeah, absolutely loved it there. So I'm slightly jealous of where you get to live.
You're always welcome.
Well, thank you. I might well take you up on that. So we connected via the Growth Mentor platform, which is where people who are a bit more experienced in business typically get approached by founders who want to get a bit of help, essentially, with their companies. So I think it's a good way to get a bit of an insight into your background and understand what you've been up to by means of explaining the Growth Mentor platform. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of Growth Mentor, what I like to do on the platform, it's just nice to find different challenges that people have and explore them with them and see what kind of processes that you've learned in the past that can be applicable to other people. The other thing that I like is that, I mean, my background covers a couple of areas. I've been doing consulting for large organizations as well as bootstrapping my own companies. So it's nice to speak to small organizations and say, okay, this is how you're going to get the maximum bang for your buck in doing exercises that will help you understand your users, and in understanding your users help you build better product.
This understanding the user bit is something that's come up time and time again when speaking to people for this podcast. And it's still surprising how many people don't do that. The ideas may be really positive, maybe, world changing potentially, but if they don't know who you're trying to connect with, you don't know what they want or what your potential ICP's why is, then often it's for nothing, right?
Yes, and it's a double header, I think, because when you're starting out, you've got to build the framework for that, and you have to understand what their problems are and their jobs to be done and how you can cater to that. But then you're never going to hit it out the park immediately. So it's that ongoing, iterative, I'm not going to call it a grind, but a further understanding and further shaping of your product based on how people are working and interrelating with it.
Is there any commonality there between working with these large enterprise corporations that you have versus the bootstrapped, your own ones and others? Yeah.
It's all the same. Because I'm going to draw a very weird graph that nobody's going to understand, or maybe I have an example of one somewhere. Let me just talk about it. On one side, you have qualitative data. On the other side, you have quantitative data. Everybody understands that. So what people say and the numbers kind of thing. And then on the other side, you have attitudinal and behavioral. So research methods that help you understand attitudinal, what people are saying about things, and behavioral, what they're doing. And you can plot all sorts of things on here, from analytics to heat maps to surveys to unmoderated. There's a whole bunch of tools. But with whoever you're working with, you want to get as broad an understanding across all of those 4 quadrants as possible, because each of them is going to give you a different insight, and it's going to help shape the insights that you get out of it, and therefore how you're going to tweak your product and change your messaging with people.
Yeah, and marketing. How you get more of the same people through the door, and hopefully turn a profit, right?
Yeah, that's the dream.
So what is your background, and how would you describe it? What do you specialize in? I feel it's a bit of patchwork and has evolved.
Yeah. So my background starts off in marketing. I was working for a company in the UK called eDiet 20 years ago, which helped people diet online. So we were then sold to Tesco at a later stage. Then I worked in online games, so word and puzzle games on the internet. I worked for a startup in the Netherlands for 5 years, came back to South Africa and did that for one of the corporates. And then I moved into I worked on my own startup for the last 12 years. We sold it at the end of last year. It's a product called Now Novel, which was an online novel writing course. It still is an online novel writing course. And at the same time, I was doing some consulting on conversion rate optimization, which I think everybody understands, but it has nothing to do with currency and a lot to do with extracting the maximum value about visitors on your website.
When you said that about currency, I don't know why it's never crossed my mind that people might confuse the conversion rates, currency conversion, with like getting more people to click on your lead magnet or download a lead magnet. So that's just throw me for a slightly.
Well, I mean, I've had that conversation when you're at a barbecue or something and you say to someone, I do conversion rate optimization, and then they start talking about the value of the USD or arbitrage between Bain and and then I'm out, because it's
I quite often don't talk about what I do to the random person I've met for the first time, because it's likely they don't understand the terminology. So I just say, marketing. And I say, but what exactly? I'm like, well, the internet, I do it there.
That's safer. That is pretty much the same route that I follow, because yes. I mean, also when you start talking about conversion rate optimization and things like that, then someone wise starts talking about dark patterns or how you're getting manipulated online. And that's a conversation I don't want to entertain too much.
So Now Novel, I read up about that for yourself. And the first question is, have you written a novel using Now Novel?
That is, no, I haven't. So we started it. It was myself, my wife, and my sister. For my sins, I got to work with both of them, and I had a full luxuriant head of hair before No. My sister has written and published books in South Africa, in the States, in the UK. So and people kept on coming up to her and saying, how did you do it? What was your process? And I was between roles at that time, and I did some investigation globally, US, UK, Australia, South Africa, India. And what came up was that everybody had the same challenge, that they didn't know how to start writing a book, or if they did have an idea, they didn't really know how to progress with that. So as a result of that, we built the Now Novel process, and it was an iterative through that in terms of the features we launched, the support we had. There's a whole lot to go into. As you can imagine, over 12 years, there was a lot of product development of it.
So what was the MVP like?
The MVP was, and this was a great lesson to learn, the MVP was not an MVP.
I'm excited to hear what that means.
I wrote a blog post about the 10 lessons that I learned from 12 years of Now Novel. And one of the lessons was there's an M in MVP. So it should be minimal. And to Paul Graham's article, Do Things That Don't Scale, where he talks about how Airbnb did things and how you have to, when you're starting off, just do things that are quick and dirty in order to validate what you're doing. So what we did is we built the Now Novel process, which was a question and answer process that helped you determine the outline of your novel. So it would say, who's your character? How tall are they? What color hair do they have? I mean, stuff like that would help you determine who your character was, and then plot, character setting, etc., etc., etc. We should have just done that with a person. And asked questions before we built the tool.
Right. When you say with a person, you mean someone who's looking to actually write a book themselves?
No, so we should have done that concierge style. So
right, yeah.
So I would chat to you, and I would go through this checklist, and then I would build up this process, and then we could do it all in the background and iterate that before having to build a line of code, which would have been a lot quicker. What we did find out as we went through the process, also, which would have been helpful to know with a person, is that actually writing a book is not as difficult as having the motivation and the sit down and force yourself to do it instead of scrolling or watching Netflix, because it's tough. So having a coach and having someone to hold your hand through the process is a very
accountability.
It's an accountability partner. Yeah. It's also someone to commiserate with you. It's also someone to tell you, don't second guess yourself, just go for it. So there's a lot of benefits to have human with you on that journey.
So, I mean, I love the accountability side of things, but one thing I wanted to pull up on is the concierge piece. And I think that's a super valuable route to test your hypothesis, right? It's not, you've got an idea for a platform, obviously to scale, obviously to get to orders and magnitudes of revenue. You need to be able to have some platform that automates a lot of it and simplifies a lot of it, and means that there don't have to be people at every single stage. But to validate that process, a lot of people don't know what happens in the background. If you just send a form in, and so you get an answer back, who knows whether that's a real person or like a million lines of code. And that's a quick way to validate the idea. And I love that whenever I've heard of it. And I think more people should do that, especially if you've got 5 customers. Do that until you work out what needs to be the next stage. What do you need to do to get to 10 customers after that and make it scalable, right?
Yeah. And the learnings are so great at that level, because everything is happening in real time, and you can get as close to the customer as possible and understand their problems more intimately. I mean, that whole mechanical Turk kind of, you don't know what's happening behind the box is very interesting. And I think you can probably do more of that now with AI than you could many years back. But yes, I've this is a side channel, but I have been securely red-pilled, blue-pilled, I don't know what color pilled it is, by AI over the last 6 months. I've been diving in, and there's just so much opportunity and so many cool applications to build.
I did a huge deep dive just with automation, so looking at what you can do with like make.com, for example. And now I'm looking at the N8N side of things and making AI agents and thinking, I might not have to respond to an email ever again in my life.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff really excites me. But as you say, if you can quickly spin up a concierge platform, which AI agents probably could get you quite a long way there. But then you probably would want to have some kind of specific backend for efficiency and ultimate scalability. But I think you could spin up something like now novel quite easily with an agent.
Yeah, I think there's definitely scope for that now. Now I think you actually want to abstract it somewhat, in that there's a premium that you'll pay for a human. So previously you might have wanted to hide the human a little bit behind the scenes. Now I think you want to make the human as obvious as possible. So maybe your onboarding call is directly with a human if people are looking for that. So there's all sorts of different permutations about how and where the space is going. Yeah, that are fascinating for me.
Well, there's someone I was speaking to recently. She asked me a lot of questions about podcasting. Is one of the things I'm super passionate about. And then she said she was really excited about these AI podcasts that are happening. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And she obviously sensed a bit of like dejection in my voice. And I was like, well, honestly, it's fine if you want to listen to that. But for me, I want that authenticity side of things. I don't want someone just to, here's a Wikipedia post, whack it into the Google thing, and then out comes a podcast at the end. I don't feel there's any real benefit to that. I'm gonna listen. I want people's opinions, not what the predicted person's opinion is. And I want that kind of flavor that you get in there. But I still say, like, if you want to listen to that, that's absolutely great.
Yeah, so, I think there are different applications for that. So yeah, I think it's quite fun. But I want to get the humans raw and prickly weirdness that comes through like you do, because I think that's more interesting in terms of understanding a different person's perspective. But a couple of things that I've done recently is I have taken user data, so user surveys and things like that, plugged it into a notebook LLM, and then shared it with a group that I'm working with, so that they get it's an interesting way of consuming data that might be a little bit dry. It's a different kind of format. And my daughter has put her biology notes into Notebook LLM for it's just another way
for recall purposes.
Yeah. It's just another way of getting data through a different channel. That it's a different format.
I mean, I think those applications are completely valid, and I love it for that kind of thing. And one thing I'm doing recently when we talk about customer interviews, for example, is get the transcript, plug it into ChatGPT and or equivalent, whatever you want to use, and say, look, what are from your point of view, what are the highlights that we should be paying attention to? And then the ability to compound, 10 interviews, 100 interviews, and then pull out the trends that are coming out there helps to get those kind of insights, phraseology insights, which would be very, very difficult to do. But I still think you should maybe for the first time or first couple of times go through the transcript yourself and try and pick out so you understand what makes sense, and be able to ask the questions that at the moment AI wouldn't be able to pull out, or might think is a non sequitur, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tonal stuff that's more interesting to explore by yourself. It does save a lot of time, and it allows you to do more on a regular basis. So yeah, fun.
So what's your? I mean, we've gone down the AI route, so let's continue for a little bit more. What are your kind of general high level thoughts of the way things are going to go in the next 3-4 years, maybe say 2 years, because we don't know where it's gonna. Are you positive about it, or are you kind of fearful?
So let me answer that question and go tangentially and say I at the beginning of this. So I've been dabbling with AI for the last year or so, as I suppose everybody is. And I decided at the beginning of this year that I was going to force myself in public to learn AI more. So I started an experiment that's called 52 AI experiments. So every week I send out a newsletter where I look at a different experiment from AI in terms of work and in terms of personal stuff. So I am a very bad DJ. So I got AI to help me DJ a little bit better. I do a lot of analysis of understanding product and background and stuff like that. So I've used it in that scope. I've created podcasts, very bad ones, but it's just interesting to see there's all of these different applications, and it's good just to dive in and see what can be done and how you can do more. So I find it fascinating. I think there's a lot of scope. My crystal ball doesn't extend into what the future will look like. I think the future is going to look very different, and I think anybody who is involved in white collar style work needs to dive in and needs to embrace the technology. And even then, I have no idea where it's going to go, but I want to be on top of it, and I want to understand it. And also, I find it fascinating, and I find it cool, and I find it fun. So that guides me more than whether or not it's going to come and eat me and be my robot overlord.
I mean, I wasn't suggesting necessarily like Judgment Day as the fearful side of things, but I think there's obviously there's real life effects and permutations, and there's one really stark one to me was like when in the last couple of weeks as we record this, OpenAI released their Sora update, which meant that the image generation was easier and better than I had seen previously, and I was like, I'd seen some image generation before. I was like, okay, I mean that's fine, whatever, but now I'm like fearful for people who I know are designers and illustrators. Yeah. Like generally that they are going to be losing livelihoods in a way. And I've generated AI images in 5 seconds that are better than anything I've had designers do in the past. And that generally makes me fearful for people's roles. And when you talk about white collar as well, I think that it'd be all too easy for corporations to plug that into ecosystems and say, well, we don't actually need X person anymore because this AI implementation that we've acquired does all the standard deviations, or it does all the bank transaction, or it does all these things. And to top off with what you said, I think we can't be like an ostrich with a head in the sand. You need to be on top of it. really, to be able to understand what's going on.
Yeah,
and to be able to hopefully drive things where you want it to go.
And I think even if you drive things where you want it to go, there will still be destruction and there will still be pain in the process. You don't know where I mean, it's hard to know where it's going to go. I don't know if you saw that memo from Toby Lutka from Spotify. So he said everybody needs to become an AI, not genius, but needs to have AI as their co-pilot in terms of how they work. Yeah. It needs to get disseminated throughout the organization. When I see a new role come in, I want you to show me how you've used AI and why this can't be done by AI, or what portion of this isn't an AI role. So I mean, he's a first mover. These are some sort of machinations, but yeah, there's definite changes afoot.
Yeah. Are you aware of Sean Ellis?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So I met him a couple of times, and the last time he did a talk in London, and he's been really up on AI, and especially in the startup space where it's you can get a lot of leverage from that and make your runway a lot longer by being able to using AI to do a lot of things, basically. And one thing that made me laugh and kind of take a step back was when he because of who he is and the amount of books he has and the amount of blog articles that have been written about him, he'll often start off his AI conversation saying, think of me, Sean Ellis, as the person who created the term growth hacking. Now apply my reasons and rhymes and, how I think about things to this role. And so he doesn't even almost have to think like himself. He just tells AI to think like him.
Yeah.
And then that starts the conversation. And I'm like, that's insane, actually.
Yeah. Your avatar is already out there and speaking for you.
So I incur Sean Ellis, the GPT, every now and again, because it does shortcut quite a few things.
Okay, I'll give it a whirl.
So what are you up to now? What's your called consulting business like? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's the same kind of stuff. I'm interested in building product. I'm interested in understanding how people tick. I hesitate to say a superpower, but I've done a lot of experimentation over the last decade or so. So I have a real understanding for that and an e-commerce background. So it's somewhere in that spot of seeing how I can use AI, seeing what I can do in terms of building product, and using experimentation in order to get there.
And what kind of clients are you working with? What kind of clients do you want to work with?
So I'm with a smattering of different clients. Fintech on some sides. I'm working with a lot of e-commerce. So in the past, I've worked with Canon across Europe. I've worked with Nike. I've worked with Sunspell. I've worked with P&O Ferry. So a lot of UK-based clients. And in South Africa, some groceries and people like that, the Bundesliga. So it's all,
oh, wow.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the Bundesliga is, unfortunately, I lack an interest in football or soccer or whatever you want to say. So even going to Cologne and hanging out with them was not, I mean, it was nice, but it was more interesting for the kill and the schnitzel than it was for the football, unfortunately. So yeah,
that's a huge spectrum, working in the fintech through to ostensibly sporting and how they think about things.
So it's the same thing. It's the same processes that you're going through. If I sketch out my same big overview of research methods, it's taking those research methods, understanding what people's motivations are, understanding what their areas of friction are, and seeing how you can decrease the friction and increase the motivation, and understand what their pathways and their journeys are, and seeing how you can modify them to make it a better experience. So those are all, it's a holistic kind of practice to just understand and improve what you're trying to present for people.
It is that simple. It's the same no matter what your company is. The methods to achieve those goals or to achieve the next step might be different. In large companies, you're bound up by more red tape, so you might have to speak to the finance and compliance and legal before the next step happens. But if in a small startup, you might be speaking already to the person who's got all the all the ducks in the same bag at the same time, and can just say yes, let's do what you're saying, Brendan. So
I mean, the interesting thing to me, if I may take half of AI again, is what happens when it turns more agentic. So, and you don't need the website. So let's assume I'm looking for a green check shirt. You know that I've bought something from Sunspell before. You know what I have in my cupboard. You know that I like long sleeves. You know that I want to spend X amount. You know that my fit is like this. You've got all of my requirements. And then I just put it in and I say, go and find me something. Your agent comes back with 3 options. That's much easier than me going on the web and trying to find all different permutations. And I wonder what happens with that layer. I mean, it's still trying to optimize, but you're optimizing for an agent as opposed to a human, which is an interesting conundrum. And I don't know the answer to that. And that's going to be a permutation that'll be interesting to find out.
And is that the kind of thing some of your clients are looking for, that kind of next level agent integration?
No, I don't think anyone is really there yet. I mean, I think there are the beginnings of shopping helpers. So, and I've seen a couple of these. I think Amazon's got one now also, but it's you go to a website and you say, I'm looking for a green shirt, and it'll provide you something like that, or you can upload an image or something like that. But I don't think anyone knows what the web is going to be like in 2, 3, 5 years' time, which is both scary and interesting. I mean, for me, looking at Now Novel again, one of the major ways that we grew our audience was through content marketing. And once you acquire someone onto your website, you then funnel them through to your site, and then there's an onboarding, aha moment, etc., in order to get there. But what's interesting to me is what happens when all of those sort of generic top of funnel searches are hoovered up by using AI. It's not happening today. It's not happening tomorrow, but at some stage it'll become general practice. And how do you acquire customers? What does SEO look like? This optimization for LLMs, and I haven't found an acronym that I really like about this. I'm exploring it and trying to understand it, but it seems a lot to me like 2014 SEO in terms of guest posting, in terms of PR, in terms of stuff like that, which is interesting, but I don't know where it's going to go. So that's fascinating to me, and I think SEO is going to be on the decline. That's my take, and as a result of that, PPC is going to be on a decline. So where does that put Google? Where does it put where people are acquiring customers? I don't know the answer to that yet.
I think one thing that's interesting is obviously there's going to be more people. The population of the world is still growing. People will still need to buy things. It's the methods, it's the journey, the pathway that people are going to take to get to the things they need to buy that's going to differ. So with the SEO side of things, I feel there's going to be a shift somehow. But ultimately, at least the next iteration, I think content marketing is still going to have a big play. Because I think once people arrive at your site or absorb your content in whichever form, they need to buy into you. And the decline of the Google search that leads to that is probably a pronounced thing. And the decline of paying money on a PPC basis to get to your website might be a different thing. But I think the proliferation and at the moment I make video, I'm making podcasts, I'm writing on LinkedIn all the time. And I think those different touch points will have a more important effect as to how people to get to your platform, whether it's your website, your app, your community in some way, shape or form.
I would, sorry.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, because I think, going back to what you said earlier, there's something around a specific perspective from a human that'll be different from what the LLM will give you, because the LLM by its nature is going to give you the wisdom of the masses. Now, Kobi, you are going to have a different perspective because you are not the masses. And also, you are a personality, and your personality will be different from the LLM. I mean, look behind you. You can see that what you're into, how you're differentiated, and that tells you. And I also think, though I don't particularly want this to be true, is that the day of the influencer in some sort of form is actually continues to be on the ascendant, because social channels and interacting with humans remains something tangible and useful, and a sort of a primal human urge.
Yeah. I mean, I now get the. I don't like to call them influencers, because I feel influencers a bit trite as a word, because you tend to get influencers who are, they did a bit of dance, or they did some cooking nominally, but there's some really powerful, interesting people on YouTube. I think a guy called Marcus Brownlee, who's a tech person, and like every time Apple releases a thing, he does like a half-hour like breakdown as to what the new features on the iPhone are. So now when I think about, should I have a look at the iPhone, I'll go to Marcus Brownlee and see what he's talked about related to that thing, because I get his vibe now, I get his level, and his opinion carries more weight than a lot of other people's opinions, and the way, you kind of buy into that side of things. So I think that kind of considered influencer and people who do a bit more long form content, I think is really powerful, and hopefully I see does prevail. But then the challenge there is that not many people can do that or will do that. And it leans back to you need to upskill in AI, you need to upskill in, content creation if you want to make sure you're ahead, or be willing to pivot into the next thing each time the next thing happens.
Yeah, so I am not a tinfoil hat wearer, but I'm not a big fan of social media. So I don't know if LinkedIn counts as a social network. I'm sure it does. I'm not on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, but I love YouTube. I mean, I have a lot of nerdy interests, and there are so many sourdough guys on YouTube. There's a guy called Gluten Morgan who's...
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. But whatever your interest, you can go so deep, and you can find your kind of nerdy people to interact with and to inform you. And I think Kevin Kelly said something about 1,000 true followers, and I think that there are all of these platforms which allow you to find those kind of niche down kind of perspectives in terms of what you're interested in. But then also, by the same token, there are people who need 3 or 4 million true followers in order to scale and do whatever they're doing. And those are the platforms available to them.
This podcast is called Aha Moments Podcast, Brendan. So we've got 3 questions to ask you. The first one is, in a product or service that you've worked on, or a company you've worked in, can you think of an aha moment?
Yes. Can I show you a picture?
You can do.
So I...
is it on your screen, is it?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen briefly.
Oh, there you go.
So I don't know if you've seen this before or someone else has shared this, but this is from User Onboard from many years ago. And this just speaks to me in terms of looking at onboarding, in terms of how people always talk about features, advantages, and benefits. But this really sums it up for me in terms of, this is your potential customer. What you're making is not this flower, which it's what you turn into. So the benefit behind it in terms of this awesome person who can do rad stuff.
You can swear. It's okay.
Now I've fluffed it, so I'll leave it. Sorry, carry on.
No, so for the benefit of people who are just listening to this, so Brendan's shown one of my, I love this picture. It's Super Mario, and back in the proper in the SNES version back in the 80s, so really pixelated. And when if you don't know Super Mario, when he jumps on the flower, then he gets a few more extra powers. And what Brendan's saying is, your potential customer is Mario at this point. Your product nominally is this flower that's going to give you the powers, but it's not that. Your product is, what you're selling is, and your business is, the outcome. It's like Super Mario on steroids at the end, and that's what you're selling. And your product, whatever you think you're selling, is just a kind of a means to get that person to there. And you want to get them to that feeling, you want to get them to that benefit, you want to get them to that outcome. And that's your kind of just a conveying, I guess, channel for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's also, if you look at that, it also speaks to your onboarding and your aha moment and things like that, because what you're looking to do is not tell people 100 things about this is the flower, this is how many petals it has, this is how it grows, and this is its phylum, and whatever the case may be.
Xylem and phloem. How do we know that? I know this. That's my A-level biology just come like straight in there. It's like, what? Carry on, sorry.
No. What you want to do is get people to that stage where you are Mario when he's much bigger and throwing flames, because that's your aha moment. That's your that's when you realize the value. I have a couple of examples. I'm going to talk about one that I worked on last year, because I think it's quite interesting, because my background is in games. I worked at a company called Xylem many years ago. And I was working on a mobile game last year, which was part of a movie that came out, Boy Kills World, and they had the game inside and they created this mobile game. But the guys who created didn't really come. They came from a nerdy game design background, not really an optimization kind of thing. So what they were doing in terms of their onboarding was very much explaining this is how it was done, and not getting people to the value and getting them straight in there. So I'm going to mix my metaphors and talk about writing for the moment. There's a theory in writing where we talk about in medias res, where instead of starting with talking about the character and talking about the descriptor and the setting and whatever, you throw them directly into the action. And that's what you want to do in terms of an online game. You want someone active, and you want them playing and understanding it. You don't want it to be some sort of passive tour. Your first task must be, okay, here I am. And once you've got this task, you got your first reward. And then once you've got that reward, you get a visual feedback that goes, bing, this is what I'm doing. And this is the outcome of that. And so in gaming, they talk about a time to value, and you want to shorten that as much as possible. And that's applicable to gaming as much as it is applicable to building an app or something like that. Your time to value, your time to fun, you want to shorten that as much as possible. So, I mean, if I can carry on talking about mobile games, I don't know if it's of interest, but
let's do it.
So what's interesting to me in mobile games is that you only have your first time user experience to kick butt with this. Like, you're on the App Store, you see this ad, you click it, you go in, you've got minutes in order to see whether it's good. And if you don't get to that aha moment, then the app disappears and you're never coming back. I mean, the retention on an average app is 25% on day one, about 10% on day 7, and between 2 and 5% on day 30. So that's your average. You're losing 95% of your audience in the first 30 days. So if you're paying $5 to acquire someone, that's a lot of money. So you've got to ensure that people are getting there as effectively as possible, and really try and maximize that time to value. I don't know if that answers your question, or if I can.
So what was your aha moment with that game? What was your time and how did you get to your time to value? How did you shrink it down?
So what we looked at was a couple of things. So analytics in terms of isolating what are the behaviors that day 2, day 7, day 30 people were interacting with. No surprises. It's people who have, and this comes out of practices, is people who have tutorial and played some games. So understood what's going on. So how do you shrink that? And then also a lot of user testing. So plugging people through it and understanding, looking at verbatims from what people are saying on the App Store, understanding what people are enjoying, and then using that sort of synthesis of these different tools in order to build up hypotheses and validate the hypothesis through testing and seeing how we can improve that. So for us, it was, this is one of my pet peeves, a tooltip is not a great way of getting people to value. Yeah.
Okay, so the next aha moment question is, can you think of an aha moment in a product or service that you buy, your personal one that you enjoyed with it, and what was it? What is it?
So you gave me some prep for this. So I was thinking about a couple. So one is first time I used Airbnb, it blew my mind that you could just stay somewhere cool. It was the same price as a hotel or even cheaper, and you'd have a bathroom and you could see all these amazing different options. ChatGPT also blew my mind and continues to blow my mind. I mean, even we were discussing it earlier, looking at the change in Sora and building a silly Ghibli picture of my family, it just, you can see the value, you can see how things change, you can see what you can do with it. Those immediate reminders are great.
With the Airbnb piece, it was before Airbnb was a thing, but my wife and I, before we were married, went to New York, and I was just like, I really don't want to stay in this hotel in New York. There must be a way to like rent someone's room or place for a couple of days. And I really can't remember what the service was, but we found this like studio apartment in Manhattan, and I absolutely loved it. It was just like, this is exactly where I want to be. I'm in New York. I don't want to be in just an standard hotel box where you could have in any single place in the entire world. And we felt for those 4 days that we actually were like living in New York. And I was like, ever since then, it's like, okay, it's an Airbnb. If we're going somewhere interesting, let's stay in the place. And nowadays, Airbnb tends to be more expensive, can be more expensive than, hotels. But I think just the value in a way of appreciating where you are just is like exponentially higher.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a nerd when it comes to cooking, as I said with sourdough, and I mean, one of my favorite pieces of tourism is to go into a grocery store and look at the different flavors of crisps. I know that sounds, but it's just understanding how things are different, buying different produce, and hanging out, and that Airbnb allows you to have a kitchen, do different things.
Final aha moment question is a personal one, a life hack maybe. Can you think of a personal aha moment that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I mean, a personal one, I have a consistent sort of aha moment, and I don't know if it comes with baking. There's so much tinkering and value that I get out of different things. Like I was talking about my friend Gluten Morgan on the internet. He told me something about using different doughs and different ways of rolling things, and it's a constant learning and benefit that I get from it. So it's fun.
I think that kind of main takeaway for me is like keep on learning stuff that's like that almost surprises you or intrigues you, because that keeps your mind sharp a bit. I'm learning guitar properly for the first time, even though I've had guitars since I was like 16. I'm actually like learning how to play properly and understand what the notes do and understand what scales are, and that for me is like, I love it.
Constant learning is a fun thing.
So, Brendan, are you happy for people to get in contact with you on LinkedIn or via other means? You got your website on there. I sign up for my newsletter. This is not follow my SoundCloud, but on LinkedIn you can sign up for my newsletter or go to my website 52aiexperiments.com. Get in contact. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Brendan. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been I'm gonna sign up to your newsletter, and I recommend everyone else does do as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kobi. Nice to chat.
Right. Thank you very much, Brendan. Thank you very much, everyone who listened and watched this episode. Please do connect with Brendan. His LinkedIn and his website are all there in the show notes or in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. He is very open to having discussions with you about anything that we talked about and much, much more. He's a very, very knowledgeable guy. Whilst I have you here, do go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, leave a review there. Or if you're watching on YouTube, please do leave a comment and review and subscribe, like, and everything that we love you to do. Please do everything that podcasters and YouTubers love you to do. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, share with the family, share with one colleague, just one person, and that makes all the difference. It really, really does help us get more people watching, listening, and we can share the insight and knowledge with more people. Stay tuned and join me on the next episode. Or if you've not seen or watched the previous ones or listened to the previous ones, go and listen back. Some of them are really quite interesting. All of them are really quite interesting. So I'll see you next time.